So around Christmas time, I mentioned to Scott that I had things that kind of were moving me. And I mentioned if there was some time that he might need someone to fill in, that I'd be willing to do so. And I kept thinking in my mind, it would probably be somewhere 6 months, 8 months down the line, maybe never. And he goes, what about 3 weeks from now? And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And, I started putting this thing together, and I didn't realize how long it actually takes to put one of these messages together. I thought I had it in my mind. I thought, I've got it like 80% there. And I sat down, and I woke up at like 5 in the morning when there was nothing before dawn. And I worked on from 5 o'clock to 10 in the morning. And I got like 2 paragraphs done. And then I asked Scott, well, how long does a typical message take? How many pages is it? I've got 2 paragraphs now. He goes, it's 17 pages is my typical message. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So just to let you know, it took me about 30 hours to put 30 minutes together. And I kept thinking, how does Scott do this on a weekly basis? Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, so I got a text this morning. And the text was, Brad, thank you for filling in. God bless, and I'm praying for you. And I texted back, thanks for the prayers, but I think you need to pray for the audience more. Okay? Well, okay, so before Scott directed his messages toward Advent, he led a series of sermons which he titled The Questions of Jesus. And the topics were questions that Jesus posed to either his disciples or to others that he encountered during his ministry. Now, scriptures documented that Jesus was asked 183 questions, which he directly answered 3. And it wasn't as if Jesus did not know the answers. Some questions were intended to entrap him. Some were hoped for answers that some hoped for answers that would justify their own actions and their own motives. So many of you know I'm a dentist. What you probably don't know is that I occasionally lecture throughout the country on issues of dental malpractice. Now, there's a saying in the lecture circuit that if you really want to be effective, you must know your audience. You must have a good understanding of their interests, their level of understanding, their attitudes, and their beliefs. So my typical audience are dentists, usually ages 25 to 60, and they're there because if they take the course that I give, they receive a 5% discount on their insurance premiums for the next 2 years. They're really not there to listen to me, okay? So I think the same applies here, in that knowing your audience is critical. I directed my message to those who I think needed to hear this the most. In this case, age 61. Likes to receive a discount on anything and loves mint chip ice cream. That target audience? Me. This message is directed to the one who I think needed to hear it the most. Me. A while back, during one of Pastor Scott's messages, there was a part of the message that really struck home, really kind of shook me to the core. And during that moment, I really began to reflect upon how an aspect of my life was doing spiritually. I felt this was something I really needed to delve into more spiritually. And there's a saying in dentistry, if you want to know something really well, you see one, you do one, and you teach one. And that's what brought me here today. I wanted to know something more about God, and to do so, I needed to teach one. Again, that's what brought me here today, because there is someone who really needed this message, and that person is me. But I want to invite you along with my spiritual walk this morning, and I hope I can shake things up a bit in your life and cause you to reflect also. And maybe, just maybe, the next time they need a guest speaker, that speaker may be you. This morning, I've come to tell you that I have an answer to all those questions that were posed to Jesus. Every single one of them, okay? Here it goes. Remember all those questions that were posed to Jesus? The answer is Jesus. Yep, that's it. Jesus is the answer. Okay? Sermon's over. Donna, Karen, you can start the potluck right now. No, I'm just kidding about the potluck. But I'm not kidding about Jesus being the answer. Jesus is the answer. I'm sure you've heard that. How have I heard it? Saw it on bumper stickers. It's such a simple and generic statement. It's just 4 words. Jesus is the answer. And although such an easy, pat answer on the surface, there's so much more to this, just like the answers that Jesus gave. If Jesus is the answer, then what's the question? What is Jesus the answer to? Jesus is the answer to our broken relationship with God. When God created Adam and Eve, they enjoyed a perfect fellowship with him. They could literally converse with God. But Adam sinned by disobeying God and therefore bringing death into the world. No, Eve nor Adam did not die immediately. However, their physical hearts now had a finite number of beats. And along with that event came a detachment from God. No longer could they freely converse with God as they once did. Their spiritual hearts also suffered a heart attack. And from that point on, humanity's relationship with God was broken. God's first couple actually suffered a spiritual death much sooner than their physical one. And I think there are many kinds of deaths besides the ones where your physical heart stops beating or where there's no longer any detectable brain activity. How many times have we heard of stories that long before someone died, they lost their will to live? Their soul no longer had the desire to strive and persevere in this broken world. And they simply longed for another place other than this one. We say that your physical death is where your soul separates from your body. And then there's spiritual death, where your soul is separated from God. When Adam and Eve sinned, it started the slow process of physical death. But their spiritual death was immediate. Adam blamed Eve for giving him the fruit for the first time in their life, and for the first time in their lives, they realized they were naked. So there came death in the form of shame, broken relationships, and pain. And along with those deaths, there was a loss of compassion, loss of creativity, loss of love, and the list goes on and on and on, and all due to sin. But God created an answer for Adam and Eve and for the rest of humanity. And that answer is Jesus. God promised a Redeemer who would reconcile God and man and allow us entry into heaven even with a spiritually damaged heart. Now, the Old Testament narrative revealed that God's plan had a plan to save his people. The New Testament shows that Jesus is that promised Redeemer, the answer for mankind. Yes, Jesus is the answer. Jesus answers for our shortcomings and restores the possibility of a relationship with God, even with a spiritually damaged heart ravaged by the effects of sin that has distanced him from us. Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." John 14:6. So Jesus is the answer, the only answer to our broken relationship with God. And in fact, Jesus is the answer for all the broken things of this world, because there's not one thing in this world that really isn't at least somewhat broken. How many options are there for heaven other than through Jesus? The answer? None. 1 Timothy 2:5-6 says, "For there is only one God and one mediator who can reconcile God and humanity, the man, Jesus Christ. And he gave his life to purchase freedom for everyone. This is the message God gave to the world at just the right time. So apart from him, there is no salvation. Jesus is the answer to the problem of our separation from God. It is Jesus who makes it possible for our sins to be forgiven and for us to be children of God. John 1:12 and 13 says, "But for all who believe him and accept him, he gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn, not with a physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God." So it's Jesus who mends our relationship with God, even those with the most spiritually damaged heart, so we can fellowship with him during our lifetimes, as well as eventually live with him for eternity. But the repair of hearts doesn't have to wait till heaven. It can start in this world, at this time, at this place, at this moment. This is a photo of my daughter Sammy and me. We're skiing up at Tahoe. And the lake is behind us in the picture. And the snow is falling as we skied. The air was crisp, it was cold, and when I ski, I don't wear headphones, I don't listen to music, because I want to sense everything that's around me. I don't want to be distracted by anything that is man-made. I look around and I sense, this is as close as heaven as I will experience on earth. Everything is just perfect. Or is it? So I ski down to the base lodge, and there are potholes in the parking lot. There's trash that overflows in the garbage can. Car horns are blaring to make sure that someone avoids an accident. And I come to realize, if this is as close to heaven as there is on earth, this world is far from perfect. And every day I'm reminded of this. The daily news lets me know that this is not heaven. Ukrainian airline shot down, Australian wildfires, global warming, displaced refugees, an island of plastic debris twice the size of Texas is floating in the Pacific Ocean. This is not heaven. Go to the hospital, and again, you're reminded that this is not heaven. Electronic monitors attached to people, IVs, ventilators, medications, patients on gurneys being transported to the emergency room. This is not heaven. Walk downtown, tent cities of homeless people, their belongings strewn all over the sidewalks, needles, empty bottles of liquor or beer cans, drugs on the ground, the smell of urine, people speaking but making no sense due to mental illness. This is not heaven. And as beautiful as this world seems, we have to realize this is not heaven. The condition of this world is a broken one. And even with the most sophisticated computers, the most well-engineered machinery, this world will never be fixed by mankind. The history of this world shows us that mankind has not become more benevolent and kind to each other. We've instead become more efficient and more sophisticated at taking advantage of each other. As Christians, we have come to this realization. And the only one that can really fix this broken world is Jesus. And although the ultimate fix will come someday, that fix that comes from inside us can start now, at this time, at this place, at this moment. Just before Christmas, my cousin Randy passed away. Now, although Randy was a dentist, and you would think that he would be health conscious, he was not. He was not in good health. Having high blood pressure, he was overweight, he did not monitor his diet, even though he was diabetic. And he would often disregard the advice of his doctors, even though one of them was his own very concerned brother. And at one point, he suffered a medical situation where all the symptoms and all the medical tests indicated that he had suffered a heart attack. When the other family members would express their concern regarding his health, we would mention, you should be concerned about yourself because of your previous heart attack. And Randy would then deny he ever had a heart attack, saying his heart was in good shape, and there's little need for concern regarding that part of his health. Randy passed away in the hospital after undergoing a risky surgery to try to save his leg that was suffering from poor blood circulation due to his diabetes. He got up from the hospital bed in order to go to the bathroom. He collapsed. He blacked out. The hospital staff rushed to start CPR, but he never regained consciousness. He passed away December 21st, right before Christmas of this year, possibly from another heart attack. I often think as Christians, we often deny the condition of our own spiritual heart. Sure, we think we could use a little help of improving our spiritual health because, hey, nobody's perfect. Possibly improving our spiritual exercise might take a little bit more time out of our week to nurture our spiritual heart, but we often feel that there's nothing that really puts us at risk of losing our spiritual life. Or is there? There's so many things that take up our time, and it seems more and more pressing that spending time with God, the ultimate heart doctor, it seems that there are so many deadlines that I have for everything. And I try to fit in as much stuff into my day because I have so little time. So little time. So I get pulled in one direction for patient care, another because I have to take a required educational course. I eat my workday lunch at my desk while reading my emails, while calling one of my dental labs about some question they have regarding an implant case. And they have a hard time understanding me because my mouth is full while I'm talking to them. But besides God being all-knowing and ever-present, I also know He's ever patient. And I think we, and especially me, take advantage of that fact and place God's deadline last at times. Because I think at times, my time for heart repair is literally my final deadline. So it's hard to admit that you and this world are not well. As for this world, this is all we have ever known. Now, a couple of years ago, I was talked into starting to play this game, much on the urging of Evan. And the game is pickleball. Now, I am not a very good pickleball player. I play on occasion. But my wife is just passionate about it. In fact, she's not here right now because she's in a pickleball tournament. And in fact, she was in a pickleball tournament yesterday, and she practiced Friday night. Okay? So she plays about 4 times a week. And I play about 4 times a month. Okay? But I decided if I'm going to take up this sport, maybe I should have a pickleball paddle, because that typically helps. Okay? So I set out to buy a pickleball paddle. And this is the way I went about it. Sport Chalet was going out of business. And they had a going out of business 70% off sale. And I decided, maybe I'll go down there and check things out. And if you've ever gone to a going out of business sale, there's stuff like strewn everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason where stuff is because they take stuff from the back and they just put it in the front. And people look at it and they go, wow, this is great, but I don't really need it, so I'll just put it here. Right? And so you just wander around the store and you look for stuff like everywhere. So I was rummaging through piles of stuff and I came upon this pickleball paddle. And I'm like, hey, 70% off. Remember the guy who likes the discounts? Okay. So I And interestingly enough, this was the only pickleball paddle that was buried among all the stuff that was there. And looking back, there was probably a reason why it was the only one that was left. Okay? So I bought it, and I show up to play pickleball, and then they go, "Oh, that's your paddle?" And I go, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So, and that kind of went on almost every time I would show up. They go, "Oh, that's your paddle?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my paddle." And I get them to realize, they say, it says, attack 2.0. And I didn't realize at the time. But there's a rating system in pickleball players. So if you're really good, like a professional player, you're like 5.0. But if you're like just a beginner who has never played before, you're a 2.0. Maybe that was a tip as to how good this paddle actually was. Okay, so after kind of enduring a lot of humiliating looks for a couple of years, I decided I'm going to get another paddle because I was sick of being questioned about the paddle that I had. So I decided no more going out of business sales. I'm going to do this differently. And how did I do it differently? Black Friday sale. You notice a common theme here? Black Friday sale with a coupon even. Okay. So I play with this one now, and I notice, hey, I can actually hit it harder. And it doesn't vibrate as much as my old one. Do I win any more games? No. Do I play any better? Not really. So I've come to realize it is not the paddle that is the limiting factor. It's the skill and the talent of the player. But I settled for a mediocre pickleball paddle because it was the only one I ever played with. It was the only one I ever knew, and I didn't realize how much better equipment that there was out there. And I think we settle for this world, both the external world around us and the world inside us, because it's the only one we've ever known. And we don't know how much better heaven is and how much better we could be. This world is broken. It will never return to Eden until Jesus returns. But it's all we've ever known. And that's why we hold so tightly to it. Places like Tahoe remind us that there is a better place than this, and not to hold so tightly to this world. But what about us? How tightly do we hold on to this life, the only one we've ever known? And sometimes it's the only one, and it's only when the pain of this world and the thought of there's got to be something better than this that causes us to look for answers to life beyond what we're capable of. Well, we go to the next slide. Okay, as you know, I'm a dentist. And when I first started practice, I worked in a practice downtown with my uncle. And I have a practice here in Oak Grove, which is a much more suburban practice. I see grandma to the grandkids. But in my uncle's downtown practice, oftentimes we would see emergency patients. And one of the days I was there, and at the time I had just started practice. I was probably 25, 26 years old. And this young man comes in, and he's there on an emergency basis. Now, this isn't a picture of that young man. This is the one I've just got off the internet. But he had a somewhat similar situation. And he came in because he was complaining of a toothache. And so the first thing I do is I sit down, and I said, I introduce myself, and I say, what brought you here today? Now, many of you know that I'm very comical, or I kind of like to joke around quite a bit. And the reason I've been known as being funny is sometimes I say things that really are not appropriate. That sometimes I kind of lose my filter on things, and my brain and my mouth don't necessarily join together. My mouth goes faster than my brain says, don't say that, okay? And it was even more so when I was younger. I've learned a little bit more now and put the brakes on things a little bit better. But this young man came in complaining of a toothache. And I went through his medical history, and I said, well, how long has this been bothering you? And he says, oh, it's been bothering me for a while now. And I said, okay, let's take a look here. And he opens his mouth, and every tooth is decayed to the gum line. It is like the two teeth that are where you don't see any tooth structure. That's what every single tooth looked like. When he smiled, you could not see a single tooth. Everything was decayed to the gums. And remember I said that sometimes I had no filter? And I said, you have a toothache? And I kind of embarrassed this guy, and he goes, well, yeah, my girlfriend's been urging me to come to the dentist, but, I've had a lot of anxiety about going, and now, but it bothers me so much, I finally listened to her, and I've come down here. Okay, and here's where my brain and my mouth go apart. So I said, you have a girlfriend? And I said, and he said, yeah, I have a girlfriend, and she's been wanting me to come down here and see the dentist. And here's where it gets worse. I said, does she let you kiss her? Okay. So, there's two key points that are taken from the story. First, when I was starting as a dentist, I said some pretty stupid things. And the second key point is, I still continue to say them. No, that's not really the second point. No, the real key point is sometimes we have to get to the point of extreme pain before we acknowledge that we need help. And even when it's so obvious that there's an issue, we often try to ignore it or treat it ourselves. It can be the same with our spiritual health. We often feel that we could be better or maybe even should be better, but we usually ignore these feelings and we lie to ourselves that they sometimes exist. And what we need to do is acknowledge that our spiritual lives are not right and to act upon that reality. When there is a diagnosis of a physical heart condition, we try to do something to our hearts to strengthen it. We take medications, we may exercise, we may even seek the advice of a heart doctor or have surgery. And when we have bad physical hearts, we try to do so many things in order to keep it. But it's entirely different when you have a bad spiritual heart. You still will seek the best help from the best heart doctor the world has ever known. But instead of trying to keep it, you're going to try to lose it. You're going to try to lose it by letting it go to Jesus. We cannot will our spiritual heart to mend. It will always be broken. But Jesus accepts your broken heart, and his sacrifice has made that heart acceptable to God. That is the comfort and the assurance that only Jesus can give. You just need to accept it. So, what is this? Easy answer. No, not Beyond Burger, just a regular one, okay? But where is this from? Anybody? Anybody willing to take a guess? Okay, give me a hint. Next slide. Where is that from? Costco, exactly. Okay. Okay, so now you know where this hamburger is from. So a while ago, I was at Costco, and I was about to leave, and I saw two women that were eating that hamburger at the food court. Now, you know, the hamburger is a kind of a rather new item, and I still haven't had one. It's easy to tell that these two women were Costco employees because they had their employee badges, and they were sitting next to each other in the food court area on the tables there. And in the area where these two women were eating, it was very easy for others around us to hear what I was saying to them, because there's just wide open space. And so there was this little distance between myself and these two women, like say from me to Gay. So I actually had to kind of yell to them to make myself heard. And the question I asked them was, is the burger good? And like many of the questions that Jesus asked on the surface, it would seem like, hey, that's a rather easy question. Is the burger good? One possibility, yes, it's good. Two, the burger's not good. Or three, maybe even a third possibility that's somewhere in between. The burger is somewhere in between. Now, okay, remember the situation here. These are two Costco employees in an area that other people could hear the response. Would they give me an honest review? Or would they reply be influenced by the fact that they were in Costco, they work for Costco, and there's others around them that could hear the response? Remember my question? Just a simple question. Is the burger good? But would I get an honest answer? Or would I get a Jesus answer? Is the burger good? So one woman responded to my question, and it took me by surprise. Again, is the burger good? She answered, it's big. It's big? What kind of answer is that? That's not what I asked. Heck, this is Costco. Everything's big. I'm surprised they don't make them as a double pack. Okay? So they could have answered me directly. Yes, no, somewhere in between. But they did not. And I don't know why they answered me why it's big. The reply of it's big was far more thought-provoking. Just like Jesus, who often replied in ways that were unanticipated, his responses were often more spiritually unsettling and disquieting. His replies were often meant to those who posed the question to be truly honest with their spiritual health, even if the true answer to their spiritual health condition was painfully honest. When people ask me about my spiritual inclination, I usually have no problem saying, hey, I'm Christian. But when they ask me the hard questions about Christianity, like Christianity versus Buddhism, do you think you'll ever see your mom in heaven? Do people really need to go to church? Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? Other than being just alive, why do we exist? Is there more to life than just living? And do I answer these questions directly? Or do I feel so uncomfortable with these questions, I respond to something that sounds like, it's big. I usually answer with another question like, I don't know, what do you think? Or I guess we're going to have to look at scripture for the answers to that question. In my mind, I don't really know myself. I wasn't ready for this test because I haven't really done my homework. Luckily, that's not the real test. I think I still have time. Time to really know God's love. Again, ever loving and ever patient. That is why I'm kind of banking on. And I'm just lying to myself. Am I running out of time? Maybe it's those painful questions asked us that make us look realistically at our lives. I know I do. Patients come every day to my office for dental checkups. I look for immediate problems and possible future concerns also. I congratulate those who have great checkups. But if I were to honestly give myself a spiritual checkup, would I congratulate myself? I don't think so. Again, this message was directed to the one who needed the most. Me. Who knows what this is? Okay, do they still have these? I don't know. Right? You have to fill in the bubbles, right? The bubbles. Okay, when I was in school, I had to take a lot of exams. And many of them utilize this form. And what's the name of this form? Scantron, right. Now, a Scantron form is only useful for a certain type of exam. It cannot be used for an essay-type test. It can't be used for a test involving free response. It can only be used for what kind of tests? Multiple choice tests, right. So, multiple choice. The first approach when I take these tests was I would read the question, and if I was certain for the answer, I'd look down at the options, and given answers that look at the options given, and fill in the bubble that corresponded to the right answer. I knew in my heart I had correctly answered the question. No ifs, no ands, no buts. But there's a second approach that I often took when taking these multiple choice questions, and it would be best described as the process of elimination. I would read the question, and just like the preferred approach, but in this case I'm looking for the correct answers, I'm looking for the wrong ones. So I go down the list, eliminating this answer that I knew was incorrect, ruling out this one because it didn't seem right, and doubting this one because it had the word like always in it. And through this process, I would come to my final answer that I felt was correct. Did I get the answer right? More often than not, yes. But it was far more unsettling. Had I spent more time studying, would my mind have been more certain, more assured? Possibly. I also think that if we spend more time studying for our spiritual health, we can also feel more certain, more assured. John 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. So as we start a new decade, maybe this year will be different. I've always worked hard, hoping to be a winner. This year, I will continue to work hard, but I'm working hard to be a loser. I'll work hard to lose my heart to Jesus. And I hope to lose my spiritually broken heart to Jesus, spiritually broken, but precious enough that Jesus sacrificed himself for it. And with so many questions in my life, I want Jesus to be the answer. This year's prayer, if Jesus is the answer, I want to be certain of the answer.